Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining me today because we're diving into a dataset that is literally rewriting the textbooks on human metabolism. We're talking about the completely record-shattering Phase 3 clinical data from Eli Lilly's TRIUMPH-4 trial. This is for their newest investigational drug, Retatrutide. Now, if you've been following the massive evolution of weight loss therapies over the last couple of years, you know the bar has already been set incredibly high. But the data we're going to break down today, it goes way beyond what many in the medical community thought was even chemically possible without surgery. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The 28.7% breakthrough. 2. A first-in-class triple agonist and how it works. 3. Healing knees and lowering BP. 4. The dysesthesia safety signal. And finally, 5. The future of obesity care.
Section 1. The 28.7% breakthrough. Shattering clinical records.
All right, let's start with the numbers that literally sent shockwaves through the pharmaceutical and medical worlds. In the Phase 3 TRIUMPH-4 trial, patients on the 12 mg dose of Retatrutide lost an average of 28.7% of their body weight at 68 weeks. Just think about that for a second. To put that into real-world, everyday terms, that's an average weight loss of 71.2 pounds. This is the absolute highest weight loss ever recorded in a late-stage obesity pharmacotherapy trial. We're now looking at non-surgical, injectable treatments that are directly rivaling the kinds of outcomes we previously thought were only possible through bariatric surgery.
And this brilliantly illustrates the drug's true power. When we look at clinical trials, we always have to adjust for the placebo effect, right? We have to account for the lifestyle interventions, the diet changes, and the physical activity that all participants are asked to maintain. Well, the placebo arm achieved a 2.1% body weight reduction, while Retatrutide delivered that staggering 28.7%. This proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that these results are overwhelmingly driven by the actual mechanism of the drug itself, not just the clinical trial environment.
To really grasp how fast this science is moving, let's put this into perspective. Consider the recent SURMOUNT-5 trial data, which basically pitted the current industry heavyweights against each other. In that trial, tirzepatide achieved a 20.2% reduction, and semaglutide hit 13.7% at 72 weeks. Those are already highly effective, totally life-changing medications. Yet Retatrutide just leaps right past them, pushing nearly up to that magical 30% threshold. So how on earth is it doing this?
Section 2. A first-in-class triple agonist. How it works.
Well, to achieve unprecedented results, you need an unprecedented biological mechanism. Retatrutide is what's known in the industry as a first-in-class triple hormone receptor agonist. Let's translate that complex jargon into plain English. While older generations of these drugs targeted a single receptor, like GLP-1, and the newer ones targeted two, like GIP and GLP-1, Retatrutide is a single molecule that hits three targets simultaneously: GIP, GLP-1, and glucagon. This triple action is the absolute secret to its amplified power. It's essentially orchestrating a much more comprehensive metabolic reset across the entire body than any single or dual agonist could ever manage.
Now, the design of the TRIUMPH-4 trial was super rigorous. They specifically enrolled adults who were carrying excess weight and who also suffered from knee osteoarthritis, running the study for 68 weeks. And because this drug is so incredibly powerful, they couldn't just blast patients with the maximum dose on day one. Instead, they used a really careful step-up dosing protocol. They safely started participants at just 2 milligrams a week and then slowly escalated them over several months to the target efficacy doses of either 9 milligrams or 12 milligrams.
What makes this nearly 29% weight reduction even more clinically mind-blowing is the starting point of the patients. A massive 84% of the participants in this trial had a baseline body mass index of 35 or higher, so this classifies them as having severe obesity. We're talking about a patient population that historically has the absolute hardest time achieving and maintaining significant weight loss, and they are achieving life-altering results here.
Section 3. Healing knees and lowering BP. The secondary triumphs.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that the scale isn't the only thing that changes when you lose over 70 pounds. Let's look at the physical healing that happens right alongside that weight reduction. Using the validated WOMAC pain score, participants on the placebo saw a 40.3% reduction in pain, which is likely due to the baseline lifestyle interventions we talked about. But the Retatrutide arms? They showed dramatic shifts. The 12 milligram dose dropped pain by 74.3%, and the 9 milligram dose actually had a slight edge over the max dose, dropping pain scores by a massive 75.8%.
And the narrative of these secondary victories gets even better. By the end of the 68 weeks, 14.1% of patients on the 9 mg dose went from living with chronic, debilitating osteoarthritis pain to being completely pain-free. Think about that. More than 1 in 8 patients experiencing total symptom resolution for their knee pain. It's just a profound improvement in their daily quality of life.
The systemic healing just kept going across other cardiovascular and inflammatory markers too. Participants on the highest dose saw a 14-point drop in their systolic blood pressure. They also exhibited improved cholesterol profiles across the board, lowered triglycerides, and decreased levels of hsCRP, which is a really key marker of systemic inflammation. So the body wasn't just getting smaller, biochemically it was getting so much healthier.
Section 4. The dysesthesia safety signal. The balancing act. But, in medicine, there is rarely a perfectly free lunch. We have to look at the whole picture objectively. Specifically, the reality of the trade-offs involved when we use these hyper-effective therapies. While analysts were hoping for a safety profile that perfectly mirrored earlier smaller studies, a new safety signal emerged in this Phase 3 data: dysesthesia. Essentially, this is an abnormal sense of touch. It can cause a totally normal sensation, like a shirt resting on your shoulder or just brushing your skin, to feel unusual, tingling, or even genuinely painful. It's a neurological symptom we sometimes see in other conditions, but it appeared prominently right here.
Let's break down the actual rates so you can see what I mean. Standard gastrointestinal side effects like nausea were definitely high, hitting 43.2% in the 12 mg group. But specifically regarding dysesthesia, the placebo group was almost non-existent at 0.7%. In the 9 mg arm, it rose to 8.8%, and in the 12 mg arm, a really significant 20.9% of patients experienced it. Consequently, the overall discontinuation rate, meaning people dropping out of the trial due to adverse events, jumped to 18.2% on the highest dose.
So the crucial point here is how we actually interpret those dropouts. Lilly's data showed that these discontinuation rates were highly correlated with a lower baseline BMI, meaning the patients who started out at lower weights actually had a harder time tolerating the drug. And most fascinatingly, the official data noted that some of the dropouts were due to, and I quote, perceived excessive weight loss. In plain terms, for some patients, the drug simply worked too fast and too aggressively. It really highlights just how unbelievably potent this triple agonist is.
Section 5. The future of obesity care, what this means.
Taking all of this into account, the miraculous weight loss, the amazing joint healing, and yes, the new side effects, we have to look at the broader market and the ultimate patient impact. Kenneth Custer over at Lilly Cardiometabolic Health framed the real-world utility of this perfectly. By addressing the obesity and the inflammation so aggressively, Retatrutide could become an absolutely critical tool to help patients avoid highly invasive, painful total joint replacement surgeries. It completely shifts the paradigm from surgical orthopedic intervention to metabolic medical management.
In the financial markets, they certainly agree. Analysts at BMO Capital Markets called the readout a true triumph, specifically noting that these are the absolute strongest efficacy numbers reported to date in this entire space. Right after this data dropped, Eli Lilly's stock actually breached the $1,000 mark for the very first time, as the industry really recognized the monumental commercial potential of finally pushing weight loss past that 28% barrier.
Let's zoom out and see how this builds into Lilly's broader strategy. Because TRIUMPH-4, it's just the beginning. Lilly actually has 6 more late-stage Phase 3 studies reading out by the end of 2026, involving over 5,800 participants globally. They're testing Retatrutide against sleep apnea, liver disease, and cardiovascular outcomes. Some analysts are now projecting that Lilly's trio of metabolic drugs could eventually hit a staggering $101 billion in peak sales. Retatrutide is positioning itself as the absolute crown jewel of that entire pipeline. Which leaves us with this final, really important question to ponder. We've officially crossed a threshold where pharmacology can now outpace surgery for weight loss. But as these drugs become hyper-effective, unlocking this unprecedented systemic healing, we're also unlocking new, complex neurological side effects like dysesthesia. So how will patients and doctors navigate that delicate balance of risk and reward? That is exactly what will define the next era of metabolic medicine. Thank you so much for diving into the data with me today on The Explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.